The first warning wasn't the crunch. It was the way the familiar engine room hum dipped a fraction, like a room going quiet before anyone notices. In the wheelhouse of the Taiwanese freighter Sian Yung, the canal pilot watched Contractors Hill slide too near on the port side. Gaillard Cut was a trench of brown water and carved rock under heat that made the air shimmer. It was late morning on December 6, 1970, southbound with traffic strung out single file. The helmsman eased the wheel. The ship didn't answer. The bow kept setting toward the bank, as if pulled by an invisible hand. Then steel rasped against rock, long, grinding, unmistakable. The vibration climbed the mast and traveled through the deck plates. Somewhere below, the hull opened near the engine room. The pilot reached for the telegraph and the radio at once and said, "We're holed." The list showed in seconds. Men on deck stopped mid-step and looked instinctively to the rail. The order to close up watertight doors went out, but water had already found a path. Pumps spun up and lost ground. A deep, regular knocking began below, bulkheads flexing in time with the ship's slow tilt. The pilot called the station and requested tugs. A short blast answered from around the bend. In the wheelhouse, voices overlapped. Course orders, engine requests, a bosun shouting for lifeboat crews. Then the hard decision cut through it all. Abandon ship. Sian Yung had been built for war work and sold into peace. Born a Victory-type freighter in the last year of World War II, renamed and traded through owners, she now ran for Chinese Maritime Trust, hauling what the Pacific needed. On this transit, she carried rice and baled cotton and a few hundred barrels of heavy bunker fuel slotted where space allowed. It was an honest cargo that would turn treacherous once it met canal water and tropical heat. Boats went down on painter lines that squealed as the hull leaned. The crew moved with the speed of men drilled to do it and shocked to need it. Some climbed down Jacob's ladders to launches nosing up in the wake. Others crossed to the west bank under the eyes of canal workers who knew groundings but not this. One man came off hurt. The rest made it clear of the tilting deck. The funnel cut an odd angle against the sky as if pausing to check its bearings. Then the freighter lost the fight. Brown water lipped the coamings, rolled into open spaces, rushed the engine room flats, and sucked her down into the narrowest, touchiest stretch of the canal. The cut stopped. Whistles went silent and hung in the heat, as if embarrassed to still be in the air. Tugs gathered and held station. Pilots on inbound ships shaded their eyes and waited for instructions that didn't exist yet. The first hours belonged to safety and the count. Boats accounted for, crew tallied, traffic halted. Then the questions arrived, the kind asked low, with eyes still on the water. How deep did she lie? Where was the tier? Could she be moved? No one knew. Divers would find out. They rolled into water the color of coffee and disappeared an arm's length down. Light was a rumor below the surface. You moved by touch, along guidelines, hands reading steel like blind fingers tracing a face. They found the rail, the ladder, the companionway edges, the torn plate that had chewed open near the engine room. Heat pooled in pockets against trapped bulkheads. Oil slicked everything and got into gloves and thoughts. They mapped what they could, surfaced, reported, went back, and did it again. They found no one aboard to save. The abandon order had done its work. The problem wasn't rescue. It was the canal itself, with a dead ship lying squarely across its throat. By the second day, the people who ran the waterway understood they had two jobs: keep commerce moving at all, and plan to do something the owner and its insurer showed no sign of doing. Temporary traffic controls threaded vessels past the site, one by one, a measured risk every time. Meanwhile, a salvage plan took shape. Lighten her, patch her, lift her, and take her out before the cut became a museum piece with a freighter in the middle. Workboats shouldered alongside. Barges came up with pumps and air bottles. The cargo that could be reached was manhandled out. Rice that swelled into a stinking paste the color of old bone. Bales of cotton that drank the canal and turned into heavy, shape-shifting blocks. Drums that had to be slung one by one. On the west bank, a ridge of spoiled grain and collapsed cotton grew in the sun and cured into a smell that people nearby could taste weeks later. Every pound off the ship would help. The canal's old giants arrived to do the work only they could. Floating cranes, Hercules and Ajax, veterans of lock jobs and earlier emergencies, came bow first around the bend, booms like quiet promises. Divers dogged patches over the jagged wound. Plugs went into broken places. Airlines snaked into compartments. The superstructure came off in sections, lowered onto barges and tallied like a dismantled house. It was slow and hard, and the kind of hot that steals strength from your hands. They did it anyway. There is a lift you don't cheer until it is over. You add air to the compartments you've made as tight as you can by feel and faith. You take strain on the hooks and listen to the winches speak in groans you memorize. You watch the surface for an extra ripple and refuse to believe it when you see it. On the morning Sian Yung moved, she did it grudgingly, a sulky centimeter that told the crew below their patches had held. Inches became feet. Mud let go. The wreck came up out of the trench she'd dug and floated ugly and lightless, but floating all the same. The cranes took a little more, just enough to keep her clear. Someone swore softly, and then everyone worked faster. They didn't take her to a berth for repair. No one pretended there would be a return to service. The canal needed its cutback. The tow order sent the freighter out past banks that had watched her fail. Small boats tagged along at a distance, like dogs following a hearse. In the Bay of Panama, beyond canal waters, the patches and pumps were no longer asked to hold. Valves opened. The ocean came back in. Sian Yung settled without ceremony into deeper, wider water than the tight slot that had tried to keep her. There, she would stay. On land, paper took over. The owner had already abandoned the ship to its underwriter. The underwriter had declined to remove it. The authority that kept the canal breathing had done the job and then gone to court to make the people who owned the trouble pay for it. The filings set down dates and tonnage and costs like fence posts. They didn't smell like cotton rot or hot fuel. They didn't record the way a pilot's voice thinned when the bow drifted. But they fixed the bones of the story. A grounded freighter in December 1970, salvage through the following seasons, a final sinking in the bay, and a waterway kept alive by people who worked where no one could see. Years later, the confusion persists in conversations a continent away. Ask about a ship that burned and rolled over in Hong Kong in 1972, and you'll get photographs of a famous liner on her side, smoke throwing shadows across Victoria Harbor. That's a different wreck. The freighter in this story did its dying in Panama. No arson, no skyline, just steel against rock in a narrow cut, and months of divers and riggers in brown water, earning back a path for the world's trade. If you speak with the men who were there, they remember details that would never appear in reports. The way the cut looked too small that morning, as if the hills had leaned closer. The exact feel of torn plate under a gloved palm, like biting foil with your teeth. The sound a winch makes when it is giving you more than it wants to give, and the instant of sick, quiet relief when a dead weight finally stirs. A launch coxswain remembers shuttling between lifeboats and bank with eyes burning from oil. A rigger remembers the boom tip shivering as the hook took weight, then calming as the wreck took water and agreed to move. Today, ships slide through a widened channel, pilots still keeping their voices level, helmsmen still reading the banks like lines on a chart. The lesson left behind isn't dramatic. It's practical. Steel meets rock, and the water wins. The only answer is skill, patience, and people who will work in the dark until daylight returns. Thank you for listening to The Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.